weekend, Dwight Grant is looking to keep Sergey Khandozhko's winless streak going past 1,057 days. And for Sergey Khandozhko, you haven't seen him in a very long time. That first win was against a man with a hair sweater. It was Rostam Akhman. But realistically for him, he's looking to make, Dominic Letty and Leon in the Fast and the Furious 1 and driving around trying to take things from that truck. No? That one didn't go well? You don't catch my reference? All right. Sergey Khandozhko is looking to make a return like Honda's Big Red Three-Wheeler. Oh, what? Now you kind of get it. Honda. Why is that his nickname? I don't understand it. And if you go back to Fast and the Furious 1, they had those modded old Civics, like the nice curved ones.
Way cooler than they had any business being.
Like a 1998. You still see them on the road today. It's a dependable car. And maybe Sergey Khandozhko is one of those guys, but realistically, I've got quite a bit to say about this fight. I can boil it down. I can make it really simple for you. I can do 2-3 minute videos like we used to way back in the day, but I'm going to make this more fun because you want some information to share with your friends. But for Sergey Khandozhko, really, really interesting guy making that UFC debut. There was some short notice aspect to it. Bartosz Fabinski was on the poster, and then realistically everything got replaced. He gets Rostam Akhman, wins a unanimous decision. Akhman was undefeated at the time. It was a little bit of fun. And then you go through, and he fights a guy after that who was 10-3 in the UFC and a legit threat at 155, but up at 170. Took on Rustam Khabilov and lost, and he got taken down on 4 of 12 attempts, but realistically, Khabilov was able to get 10 minutes and 35 seconds of control time. People forget how good Rustam Khabilov was.
Benson Henderson in the main event. It took that to end his win streak.
Rustam hasn't fought since he beat Sergey Khandozhko at 170. Rustam Khabilov is one of those guys. So, realistically, I look at this fight. Sergey Khandozhko was a bit of a head-scratcher coming into the UFC. He still is one. He still is one. And Dwight Grant, yeah, he either knocks guys dead or he lulls people to sleep and has very, very boring fights. If you want to see one, go watch when he fought Zach Otto.
You're going to get where I'm going with this, Craig, but this could take a second. We live near Old Quebec, right? Very old city, very pretty place.
I was there very recently.
Okay, well, when we were in school, there was this trip that you could do with your school where you go and you see all the history and stuff. And what we did is one of our activities was you go to one of these old barracks, you get to reload a musket. Dwight Grant fights like he has a musket in his hands. The bullet hole is huge if it ever lands through anything, but I don't know if you've ever loaded a musket. It takes 4.5 minutes. It takes so long to reload. That's Dwight Grant. The one shot is amazing, and if it lands, oh my goodness, it's gonna be like Dwayne Wade over Anderson Varejao, and they're gonna play that poster for years and years and years. Go back to the Carlo Pedersoli knockout. I was telling Craig how much I liked that knockout before we started filming. It is truly one of my favorite knockouts of all time because the timing is so perfect. You have a guy going for a head kick and the other guy ducks underneath it and throws an overhand at the perfect time. He flatlines Pedersoli with that one punch. But I'm not going to lie, I've kind of let myself get almost overexcited by that one performance, and even how Dwight Grant looks in some of his losses. I know we fed this horse until it's died about how good he looked against Daniel Rodriguez, but we all start to tell the other side of the story, and it's that, yeah, when he is throwing those one single shots, he looks really good. But what happens if he throws more than a single shot? He gets very tired in his fights. And Dwight Grant, to me, is almost like the striking version of Shamil Abdurakhimov at this stage of his career. Remember when the last time we broke down Abdurakhimov's fights? It was, hey, he's a really good wrestler, but at this age, I don't really know if he can be dedicated to a wrestling game plan that doesn't completely get rid of his cardio. I kind of look at Dwight Grant the same way. Yes, his one strikes are really nice here and there, but I don't think at this age he can put together enough combinations to really go out there and wow his opponents with his volume. Because if you look past the majority of his fights, you can stifle him, and not even with your own strikes. If you just make Dwight Grant think about the takedown, it kind of puts him in a defensive shell, similar to a Jake Ellenberger way back in the day against Rory McDonald. It's not that Rory McDonald's able to really wow Jake Ellenberger with what he did. He was just able to fake a lot, fake and feint, and it kept Ellenberger sort of guessing the whole entire fight. I think you can get Dwight Grant into one of those rhythms to where you almost make him question everything that he's got going on, and then he just doesn't throw anything as a result. So I do think with Dwight Grant, if Sergey can get on the inside of him and just start putting volume together, he should be able to win consistent rounds throughout this fight.
Yeah, Sergey Khandozhko, and I went back, he was a featured prelim in that fight against Rostam Akhman. That was Gustafsson versus Smith as a main event, and in that one they mentioned he's a master of sport in hand-to-hand combat and karate. It's master of the sun. So really, master of hand-to-hand combat. and karate. And it's kind of weird when you break it down after that, because if you look at where he's trained in the last couple weeks, it's Extreme Couture in the UFC PI. Then before that, Academy MMA in Minsk, Belarus. And apart from that, for Khandozhko, you just haven't seen a big enough sample size. So realistically, I know he's a good striker. And by that, I mean decent volume. But he can get backed up. But when he gets backed up, he's a decent counter striker. He has porous takedown defense. But Dwight Grant's not taking down many people at all. Yes, he took down Stefan Sekelic. Yes, he took down Francisco Trinaldo. But apart from that, and I guess he took down Zach Otto as well. The weird thing for Dwight Grant on the volume side of things, he's lower than UFC average on output in terms of strikes landed per minute, but also strikes received. So that's a double-edged sword.
And I do think it is the threat of his power, too, because people realize that there is a consequence for standing in the pocket with someone like Dwight Grant.
But now you look at it. He took on Alan Jouban, beat him by split decision. I thought Dwight Grant won that fight.
Close one.
That's fair. Takes on Dana Rodriguez, knock him down, drag him out first round, but then he gets knocked out. Beats Stefan Sekelic. A lot of people thought Stefan Sekelic won that fight. And then he beat Francisco Trinaldo his last time out. That was in October of last year. I have the judges' scorecards. Adelaide Bird gave round 1 and round 2 to Trinaldo, and then scored the third round a 9-9 because there was a bit of an illegal eye poke in that one. D'Amato scored at round 1 and round 2 for Grant, and then 9-9 in the third.
You have two awful judges you're using
and
right now to defend your points.
Ron McCarthy scoring at round 1 and round 2 Trinaldo with a 9-9. And realistically, I had round 1 for Grant, round 2 for Trinaldo, round 3 is a 9-9, so it's a draw. But again, it was a weird fight. And Trinaldo, Massaranduba, both of those guys in that fight were quite old, if we're really being
honest. And this is my problem with most Dwight Grant fights. It's very hard to point to any single round in any of his fights and say, wow, he definitively won that.
Unless he knocks somebody out.
Exactly. That's why I really do have a hard time thinking he's going to be able to win this fight. Because unless he's able to clip Khandozhko with a huge strike on... Let's say he is able to counter a kick similar to what he was able to do against Pedersoli. Pedersoli's not very durable, though. And he's been in a lot of crazy fights even before that. I just think Khandozhko, with his movement on the outside, is going to give Grant a lot of trouble. Because if you throw in combination, then yes, maybe you can get him to back straight up. And eventually, at the end of your combinations, you're going to be able to land 1 or 2 strikes. But with the way that Dwight Grant strikes, I think he's going to throw a 1-2. If it lands, it lands. If it doesn't, there's going to be a reset and then a massive period where there's going to be a lot of inactivity from him. That's where I think Sergey can take advantage of and start to win rounds that way.
Big time opportunity for both of these guys. We look at the odds. Dwight Grant open at a plus 165. He's a minus 104. For Khandozhko, the comeback open a minus 190. He's a minus 121. And if we have a look at the fan vote, this one will be a surprise to us. It is to you, Matt. I'm going to say over under 70% Dwight Grant because people know who he is.
I'll say under.
I'm going to say under. Oh, wow. 520 total votes, 74% Khandozhko, 83% by decision for the 26% that have Grant, 66% by decision, 30% by knockout. All of that is a surprise to me because, again, Khandozhko, decent counter striker, might not be the best game plan against Dwight Grant. However, he actually does have pretty good volume. I like the little bits and flashes I've seen out of that karate background. When it comes to the wrestling, I'll cancel them out. Dwight Grant's bounced around at some really good gyms in California. I know I put it up on the picture, Alliance, but he's been at AK, he's been at Alliance, he's been at some of the big names. So I do have Khandozhko in this fight, which might come as a surprise to a lot of people. I can see people in the comment section definitely siding with Dwight Grant because you've seen a lot more of him. But for me in this one, I'm going with Honda. It's a dependable engine.
I agree. If Dwight Grant won by first round knockout, I don't think either one of us would be very surprised. It's just, if you look at the likelihood of that happening, and the thing about Grant too is, if he hurts his opponent in the first round, do you really think he's going to flurry on them immediately after to get them out of there? Maybe he will, but even if he does, that might almost be a negative for him, because then he will be a lesser version of himself later on. So I do like Khandozhko in this fight, but I think this will be an entertaining matchup.
I wonder what Larry and Tyson would make of this matchup. But both of us going once again with not the enticer, it's Honda, Sergey Khandozhko, to get the win. Some big-time fights coming up on this card. Couple of Canadians in action. Tanner Boser, Charles Jourdain, and Marc-Andre Barriault. Big-time opportunity for those guys. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.